The palace bells echoed throughout Atheon, vibrating across the golden hills and the ivy-covered rooftops. It was the sound of celebration, the official announcement of an alliance between two kingdoms that, for centuries, had exchanged nothing but mistrust and swords. Now, at last, peace would be sealed through a marriage, that of Queen Serena D'Aurel to the Prince of Vardo, a man she barely knew, yet to whom she would have to say yes before an altar and an entire continent. The streets were alive with festivity. Flags fluttered, flowers were tossed into the air, and the people shouted the queen's name with devotion. But within the palace walls, the sound was different. There, silence reigned. Serena watched it all from the highest balcony, dressed in white and gold. The light fabric of her tunic rippled in the wind, but her heart remained still. To the world, she was a sovereign, strong, proud, unshakable. But within her, strength bore another name: resistance. Resistance to the role imposed upon her. Resistance to the idea of being nothing more than a political link. Resistance to the emptiness the throne had left since the death of her parents. Two monarchs who had ruled with love and died for the peace she was now forced to secure. Serena had learned early on that royalty did not love, it served. And she served well, perhaps too well. In the corridors, they said she was made of ice, that she never smiled, that she looked at men as if they were statues. The people respected her, but few truly knew her. Not even she herself remembered who she was behind the crown. The white marble palace, with its endless halls and stained grass that caught the light like blades, was both a fortress and a prison. With every step, Serena felt the echo of duty. Every servant's gaze was a reminder that she could not fail. Love, to her, was a dangerous luxury. A luxury that could destroy kingdoms. But destiny has a way of toying with those who believe they command their own path.
That morning, the main gates opened to welcome a new contingent of the royal guard. Among them was Sebastian Hale, the youngest, with a calm gaze and a steady presence. Son of a soldier who had fallen in battle, he had grown up carrying the weight of honor and loyalty on his shoulders. He never imagined he would be summoned to the most restricted wing of the court, the Queen's personal guard. When his name was announced, Sebastian felt his stomach tighten. He knew what was said about her. He also knew that a single wrong word could cost him his position or his head. But there was something in his nature that set him apart from the other soldiers. While others saw the court as power, he saw it as loneliness. While they dreamed of glory, he dreamed of purpose. And perhaps, deep down, he already sensed that he would find both in the eyes of the woman he was sworn to protect.
The first time he saw her was during the changing of the guard in the grand hall. Serena descended the staircase with the grace of someone born to command. She wore a simple gray cloak, yet her presence silenced even the sound of boots on marble. Sebastian kept his eyes lowered, as protocol demanded, but still he felt the air shift as she passed. A faint scent, something between jasmine and rain, lingered in the air. He thought he had never seen anyone so distant, and yet so fragile within. It was only a feeling, an intuition, but the kind that burns against the skin. Serena, in turn, barely noticed him. Just another face in the crowd, another oath of loyalty. She had heard so many. She knew that every man in the guard feared her more than they respected her. And to her, that was preferable. Fear kept questions away. Respect, on the other hand, was dangerous. But the next night, when the palace had fallen asleep and the torches flickered in the corridors, Serena saw him again, standing before her, door motionless as a statue. And for a reason she herself could not understand, she stopped.
"Have you been on guard for long?" she asked, breaking the rule that demanded silence between sovereign and soldier. Sebastian lifted his gaze, surprised. None of the guards had ever heard the queen's voice outside of official ceremonies. "Long enough to know that the silence of this corridor is heavier than the armor, Your Majesty," he replied calmly. Serena raised an eyebrow slightly. She hadn't expected such a candid answer. "And what makes a guard think he can judge the silence of the palace?" she said, more out of provocation than irritation. "Judge, no," he corrected gently, with a faint, discreet smile. "Just listen. Silence speaks too." She observed him for a second longer than she should have. Then she turned and entered her chambers. But as she closed the door, she noticed something curious. She was smiling. A small, involuntary, but genuine smile. Something that hadn't happened in years.
That night, Serena couldn't sleep. She paced back and forth, feeling the weight of her silk gown and of the approaching marriage that loomed like a sentence. She thought of Sebastian, the calm tone of his voice, the respectful yet daring way he had looked at her. It was absurd. She knew it. He was just a guard, and she, a queen, promised to a prince. But there was something in his presence that reminded her that she was still human, that beneath the crowns and promises, there was still a woman capable of feeling. For a moment, she imagined the impossible. What if she could choose for love, not for duty? But the thought frightened her so deeply that she forced herself to forget it.
On the other side of the door, Sebastian couldn't shake her image from his mind. Throughout his patrol, the queen's face came and went in his thoughts like the flicker of a flame. It wasn't just her beauty, it was her gaze. That weary, deep look that concealed something beyond royalty. Why does someone with so much power look so imprisoned, he wondered. He knew the danger of thinking too much about her. He had sworn loyalty. He had sworn to protect, not to desire. But the heart, he had learned early on, never swore to anything. Little by little, duty and feeling began to blur, like the threads of a forbidden tapestry. The following days passed in silence, yet something had changed. Without realizing it, Serena began to notice him, his precise movements, the way he observed everything, not with arrogance, but with genuine attention. She saw him training in the courtyard, and the sound of his sword striking metal seemed to echo inside her. Sometimes, when she walked through the gardens, she would catch sight of him from afar, guarding her with a discreet gaze. And in certain moments, she found herself wishing he would come closer, speak to her again. But as a queen, she had learned to suffocate her desires. And every time that thought arose, she drowned it in silence. Meanwhile, the wedding drew nearer. Letters, rings, garments, everything prepared. The Prince of Vardal would arrive in 3 weeks. Serena feigned enthusiasm before the court, but inside her, fear was growing. It wasn't fear of the man himself, but of the fate he represented. She would become another piece in a political game, condemned to smile without soul and bear heirs for a peace she no longer believed in. One night, as she signed the documents of the union, her hand trembled slightly. The quills stained the parchment, a drop of ink spreading like blood. It was in that moment that Sebastian entered to announce the end of his watch. He noticed the trembling hand, the distant gaze. And without thinking, he said, Sometimes the body trembles when the heart wants to run away. She looked at him, startled. Are you saying I should run away, guard? I'm saying no one should be forced to live what they don't desire. The air between them grew heavy, charged with something neither could name. Serena turned her eyes away, but didn't answer. Inside her, her heart was beating far too loud for words.
From that night on, the silence between them ceased to be uncomfortable. It became understanding. On cold nights, Serena would step out onto the balcony and find him there, always in the same place. They didn't exchange many words, but each other's presence was enough. One of those nights, she asked, "Do you believe it's possible to love someone and still fulfill one's duty?" Sebastian hesitated before answering. "That depends on what one calls duty, Your Majesty. And what would you call it?" "Duty is to protect what is right, even if it means breaking a rule." She glanced at him sideways, intrigued. "You speak as if you've loved someone before." He smiled, a brief, sorrowful smile. "Perhaps I do now," he murmured, barely audible. Serena pretended not to hear, but her hands clenched against the railing and a flame ignited in her chest, dangerous, beautiful, and uncontrollable. In the days that followed, Serena lived in turmoil. By day, the face of the unshakable queen. By night, the woman who longed for a voice. Time seemed to toy with her. Each dawn brought her closer to the wedding, and each night led her back to Sebastian's eyes. She asked herself, was it love, or merely the desire to be seen as human again? But deep down, she knew the answer. Love was that which bloomed without permission, that which grew even in forbidden soil. And hers was blooming there, in the silence of the night, and in the words that could never be spoken. On a stormy night, Serena left her chambers barefoot, her cloak loosely draped over her shoulders. The rain fell heavily, and the wind made the windows creak. Sebastian found her in the corridor, alone. "Your Majesty," he exclaimed, rushing toward her, "it's far too cold. Please return to your chambers." She turned to him, her eyes shining with something between anger and despair. "And what good is the warmth of a room if everything inside is frozen?" He froze. That sentence pierced straight through him. Without thinking, he removed his own cloak and placed it over her shoulders. "Then at least let me warm you, Your Majesty." It was a simple gesture, yet enough to break the final wall. Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for an instant the entire world disappeared. There was no throne, no crown, no war, only two weary souls recognizing each other. That night, Serena returned to her room with her heart ablaze. She felt fear, guilt, desire, and for the first time, hope. She knew that what she felt was impossible, and perhaps that was why it felt so alive. Because deep down, what we desire most is often what we cannot have. But love, when it is true, never asks for permission, and hers, still in secret, had already begun to change the fate of an entire kingdom. The nights in Atheon had grown far too long. Since Sebastian's arrival, the air in the palace felt different. There was something unsettling in the silence of the corridors, a kind of silence that wasn't empty, but filled with something even Queen Serena D'Aurel herself could not name. She often walked alone through the marble gardens, where the wind played among the magnolia leaves and the moonlight rested on the water of the fountains. It was there, surrounded by shadows and fragrance, that she felt a little more human, far from the eyes of the council, far from the expectations that had suffocated her since birth.
But that night, when she stepped into the inner courtyard, she wasn't alone. Sebastian was there, motionless, leaning on his guard's spear, helmet under his arm, his gaze lost among the constellations. "Your Majesty," he said, surprised to see her. "I didn't expect that I would have insomnia," she interrupted softly, with a trace of irony. "Royalty rarely sleeps well, Sebastian. The crown weighs even when it rests." He lowered his eyes, almost as if he had overheard a secret he wasn't meant to hear. But then, with a boldness few would dare before her, he replied, "Sometimes the weight can be shared if one allows themselves to be seen." She looked at him in silence. No one spoke to her that way. No one dared. Serena turned away, but inside, something trembled. A simple phrase, spoken by a common man, had managed to crack the wall of ice she had built over the years. In the days that followed, his presence became a constant echo. In the corridors, at the doors of the halls, on the steps of the throne. He was always there, silent, watchful. And she began to notice details she hadn't before. The way he watched the sunrise through the windows, how his eyes seemed to carry an ancient sadness, as if fate had placed him there by mistake. It was a look she understood, because deep down, Serena too felt that she didn't belong to her own life.
The conversations began small. A question about the weather, a comment on the distant sound of rain. Trivial words that slowly became veiled confessions. One night, as the torches flickered and the wind howled through the towers, she asked, "Why did you accept this post, Sebastian? To protect a queen who doesn't even smile?" He hesitated, then answered with the sincerity of someone who has nothing left to lose. "Because I've seen too many wars, and I thought that maybe protecting what is beautiful would hurt less than destroying what is just." Serena looked away, but her heart, the one she thought she had forgotten, tightened in her chest. As the weeks passed, their encounters were no longer by chance. She waited for him on nights when the moon was high and the corridors were deserted. They sat beneath the great stained glass window of the northern hall, where the bluish moonlight pierced through the glass and painted the floor with figures of angels and swords. She spoke of duty, he spoke of freedom. She told him about her arranged engagement, and he about his life before the palace. Sebastian came from a coastal village where the sea and the wind forged men who were tough, yet sincere. He told her that his father had died in the war and that his mother had raised him saying, "No one truly serves the crown if they forget to serve their own soul first." "And you," he asked during one of those conversations, "do you still remember what it means to serve your own soul, Your Majesty?" Serena closed her eyes for a moment. "My soul was sold long ago, Sebastian, in exchange for peace." He didn't reply, but his silence said everything. A silence that welcomed, that listened, that seemed to want to heal her from within.
One of those nights, a thunderclap echoed so loud that the windows shook. Serena, reading alone in the library, dropped her book. A few seconds later, the door opened. It was him. "Are you all right, Your Majesty?" She looked at him, startled, her heart racing, unsure if it was from fear or relief. I just got scared," she replied. Sebastian took a step forward. The flash of lightning lit up his face, and in that instant she realized how beautiful she found him. Not the beauty of nobles, cold and polished, but a living beauty, marked by truth and courage. He stepped closer, hesitant. "You don't have to be afraid." "It's not the thunder that frightens me, Sebastian," she murmured, almost in a whisper. And then, for the first time, He truly saw her, without the crown, without the cloak, without her defenses. A woman fragile and powerful at once. For a moment, the world seemed suspended. Rain pounded against the windows, and the sound filled the space between them. He reached out, only to pick up the book she had dropped, but when his fingers brushed against hers, time seemed to stop. It was a brief touch, yet filled with everything that could not be said. A touch that whispered, "I see you. I feel you. I understand you." She stepped back, but the warmth of that instant stayed on her skin like an invisible mark. In the days that followed, Serena tried to ignore what she felt. She spent more time with the ladies of the council, accepted formal invitations, smiled at the foreign prince during meetings and letters that meant nothing. But in every hall, in every corridor, she felt Sebastian's eyes on her. A discreet, respectful, yet burning gaze. A gaze that made her feel alive. One afternoon, during the equinox ceremony, she passed by him and, without thinking, let a silk handkerchief fall. He picked it up and returned it with a swift movement, but the tip of his fingers brushed lightly against her wrist. A single second, and Serena's whole body ignited. That night, she couldn't sleep. Neither could he.
Sebastian knew he was doomed. From the very first moment, he knew that a single misstep would mean death. But how does one control the heart when it decides to disobey? In the rare moments he was alone in his quarters, he remembered the sound of her voice, the pauses between her words, the way her scent lingered in the air after she left. He tried to convince himself it was only fascination, but it was already love. A love that ached simply for existing. He dreamed of her and woke up with guilt, and still, the next morning he longed to see her again. One night, Serena appeared in the hall where he stood guard, wrapped in a blue cloak. "I can't breathe inside this palace," she said, gazing at the starry sky through the window. "Every room reminds me that my life was decided before I was even born." Sebastian watched her, unsure of what to say, but when she turned her face toward him, her eyes were glistening. "And the prince?" he asked softly. "Do you love him?" Serena let out a humorless laugh, as if it were possible to love someone you've never seen. Silence. Only the wind. She stepped closer to the window and ran her fingers across the glass. "They say he's just, kind, that he'll be a good king." She paused. "But, Sebastian, what if I don't want a good king? What if I just want someone to look at me as if I were alive?"
He swallowed hard. He wanted to answer, wanted to touch her, but the words got stuck in his throat. Then she turned her face toward him. "And what if I'm making a mistake?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Then let it be a mistake worth making," he finally said. She held his gaze for a long, intense moment, and that was when everything fell apart. Serena took a step forward. He didn't move back. The distance between them vanished like smoke, and when her hands touched his chest, the entire world seemed to go silent. The first kiss came like lightning, unexpected, inevitable. There was no haste, yet there was urgency. It was the kind of kiss that carries every fear and every repressed longing of a lifetime. For an instant, the entire universe was reduced to that touch, the taste of the impossible, the sound of a soldier's heart beating in sync with a queen's. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless. Her gaze trembled, his burned. "This can't happen again," she whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her.
He only nodded, knowing they were both lying to themselves. In the days that followed, nothing felt the same. Serena continued to play the role of the promised queen, but the council's words, the prince's letters, even the celebrations, all felt distant. Something inside her refused to obey. Sebastian, meanwhile, tried to remain composed, but every time she passed by, his whole body reacted. The nearby guards noticed how tense, how distracted he became, and the glances between them, even the briefest ones, began to stir murmurs among the servants. He knew the danger was growing, but he also knew there was no turning back. One night she called him quietly to the balcony of her chambers. The moon was full, casting a soft, melancholy light across her face. "I don't know what's happening to me," she confessed. "I've spent my whole life believing that love was weakness, and now, the more I fight it, the more I lose myself." Sebastian looked at her, and his answer came without hesitation. "It's not weakness, Your Majesty. It's what makes you human." She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there were tears. "If anyone sees us, you'll die. And if that's the price to love you, I'll pay it without regret." The words hung in the air, heavy with something greater than any vow. She embraced him, for the first time, without fear. And there, in his arms, she felt what it truly meant to be free, even if the whole world wished to chain them.
But the heart, when it loves what is forbidden, always knows it stands at the edge of an abyss. Every stolen touch, every exchanged glance was a risk. And still, night after night, they continued to meet, hidden among shadows and whispered promises. He would run his fingers through her hair, and she would gently trace the scars on his hands. "These marks," she would say, "are stories of pain." "And yours," he would reply, touching her face, "are stories of courage." Yet, within every word spoken, fear lingered, the fear of being discovered, the fear of losing everything, and above all, the fear that the very love which set them free might also be the one to destroy them. And so, between stolen kisses and shared silences, Serena and Sebastian discovered that the truest kind of love is the one born on the edge between duty and desire. They knew the world would never accept them. But even so, in the long nights of Atheon, beneath the veil of the moon, they chose to love, even in secret, even if doomed, because there was something within them that neither the crown, nor fear, nor time could ever erase. Something that began with a single touch, and now burned like an impossible fire among the ruins of duty and the dreams of the heart.
Summer came to Atheon with a strange kind of heat, heavy, almost suffocating. It was as if the very air within the palace could feel the weight of the secret growing inside its walls. Outwardly, everything seemed in order. The gardens bloomed, the fountains sang, and the counselors prepared the grand banquet for the arrival of the Prince of Vardel. But within, in the silence of the corridors, Queen Serena D'Aurel's heart beat out of rhythm. She tried to fulfill her duties with dignity, yet every formal word, every forced smile was a cruel reminder that her life no longer belonged to her. And worse, now she knew what freedom felt like. She knew what it was to love. And that awareness made every false gesture ache like an open wound. Sebastian, on the other hand, was restless. Love strengthened him and destroyed him all at once. In the moments they shared, he felt invincible, but when she walked away to perform her royal duties, fear consumed him. Fear of being discovered, fear of losing her, fear that all of it was just a dream that daylight would shatter. That week, the castle buzzed with preparations for the alliance.
Guests arrived from every corner of the realm, and the windows were draped in blue and gold velvet. Serena, however, watched it all from a distance, as if she no longer belonged to that world. During a rehearsal for the ceremony, one of the counselors approached her with a tone too smooth to be harmless. "Your Majesty," he said with a smile that hid poison, "the prince will arrive within 3 days. We trust that all is in order, including your Grace's heart." She held his gaze, but felt the blood drain from her face. There was something in that phrase, something suspicious. That night, when she met Sebastian in the cypress garden, fear began to bloom within her. The moon was thin and silver, and the sound of crickets mingled with his voice. "They know, Sebastian," she whispered. "Someone saw something, I'm sure of it." He took her hands, his eyes steady but worried. "They can't prove anything, and even if they could, I wouldn't let them touch you." She smiled sadly. "Protect me from whom, Sebastian? From my enemies? Or from myself?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing her face. "From anyone who tries to take you away from me." The kiss that followed was intense and desperate, a kiss that felt like a farewell before it had even ended.
2 days later, the castle awoke in an uproar. Prince Lysander of Vardel had arrived. Serena received him in the grand hall, draped in a golden mantle and wearing a sapphire tiara. He was handsome, noble, well-mannered, and utterly indifferent. He fulfilled every formality with a polite smile and eyes that revealed he already knew this marriage was a transaction, not a union of hearts. During the banquet, Serena maintained a flawless composure, but every time her gaze met Sebastian's, standing behind the marble columns, performing his duty as a guard, the ground seemed to tremble beneath her feet. They couldn't touch, they couldn't even look at each other for more than a heartbeat, yet the distance between them seemed to pulse. Lysander noticed, not with jealousy, but with cunning. Kings do not love, but they recognize power, and he recognized the power that the guard held over the woman who was meant to be his wife. The next morning, everything changed. Sebastian was summoned to the council hall. There stood the prince, 2 generals, and the elder counselor Marek, the same man who had watched him with suspicion for days. "Soldier Sebastian Hale," Marek began, his voice cold, "we have received disturbing reports regarding your conduct. Do you deny having overstepped the bounds of your duty toward Her Majesty?" Sebastian felt his breath falter. "I do, sir," he answered, trying to remain steady. "My duty is to protect the Queen. It has always been so." "And is this what you call protection?" the counselor retorted, throwing a piece of fabric onto the table. A blue silk veil, the same one Serena had worn the night before, the same one she had left behind in the garden. Sebastian's blood ran cold. Before he could speak, the prince rose to his feet. "The honor of a queen is the honor of a kingdom, and the one who stains it, even with pure intent, must be punished." 2 guards stepped forward. Sebastian did not resist. He let them take him, fists clenched, heart ablaze. When Serena found out, her world collapsed. She ran through the corridors like a shadow in despair. She pushed open the doors of the council chamber and screamed, "What have you done to him?" Silence was her answer. Marek looked at her with cold indifference. "A soldier who oversteps his post must answer for treason, Your Majesty. The trial will be held at sunrise." Her legs gave out beneath her. Treason. The word echoed inside her like a cruel sentence. When she returned to her chambers, she fell to the floor,
crying for the first time in years, not as a queen, but as a woman. That night was eternal. The moonlight streamed through the windows, silvering the floor. Serena paced back and forth, her heart torn between duty and love. If I set him free, I lose the throne. If I let him die, I lose myself. Sebastian's words echoed in her mind. It isn't weakness, Your Majesty. It's what makes you human. And for the first time, she understood what he meant. She didn't want to be remembered as a cold, obedient queen. She wanted to be remembered as someone who chose to love, even if the world hated her for it.
Near midnight, Serena cloaked herself in a dark mantle and slipped out in silence. The corridors were empty. The guards were changing shifts. Her heart beat so loudly it seemed to echo against the stone walls. She descended the secret stairs on the west side, passages she had known since childhood. When she reached the dungeon, she saw 2 guards asleep, defeated by wine. With trembling hands, she took the keys and unlocked the cell. Sebastian was there, chained, his face bruised, but his eyes still unwavering. When he saw her, he tried to stand. "Serena," he whispered in disbelief. She ran to him, kneeling by his side. "I can't let you die because of me." "And the throne?" he asked weakly. "Your kingdom?" She looked at him with tenderness and strength. "What is a throne worth if the heart remains in chains?" With a click, she freed him from the shackles. They embraced, the purest and most dangerous embrace ever to exist. "We'll run away," she said. "There's a way out through the northern stables. Before sunrise, we'll be far from here." The sound of hooves echoed in the dawn. The wind lashed their faces, her cloak flying like a golden shadow under the moonlight. With every heartbeat, Atheon grew smaller behind them. And ahead, the unknown and freedom. At the top of the hill, Serena looked back. The palace gleamed in the distance, majestic and far away. For a moment, she thought of all she was leaving behind: power, name, destiny. But when she looked at Sebastian, she saw what she had truly found: peace. Days later, the kingdom awoke in chaos. The queen had vanished. The nobles cried out in scandal, the prince had returned to Vardell in fury, and the council tried to bury the truth beneath layers of lies. But among the people, a legend began to spread. They said the true queen had fled with the man she loved, tired of ruling beneath golden chains. They said her love had freed not only one heart, but the spirit of an entire kingdom. 5 years later, in the southern mountains, among vineyards and fields of lavender, a small village thrived. No one knew who the couple living in the stone house by the river really were, but sometimes when the wind blew, the villagers could hear a woman's voice reading aloud and a man's laughter echoing soon after. Serena and Sebastian had built a home. No crowns, no titles, only what truly mattered. One afternoon, as the sun was setting, she turned to him and said, "Sometimes I still dream of the palace, of its cold walls, of the empty throne." He smiled, brushing her hair back. "Do you miss it?" She shook her head. "No," she replied, "because now I know what it means to truly reign." Sebastian looked at her, and she added softly, "To reign over one's own heart." They kissed, and the wind carried her laughter across the hills. And so, between the gold of twilight and the scent of freedom, the forbidden love that defied a crown became the most beautiful legend of Atheon. They say that on nights when the moon is full, the spirit of the queen walks through the gardens of the old palace, but not as a shadow, as a living memory of the love that dared to be greater than duty. Time, that invisible sculptor, had passed over the kingdom of Atheon with patient, icy fingers. The walls of the old castle no longer gleamed as they once did.
The banners were worn, the roses in the gardens had lost part of their color, and the voices that once echoed through golden halls now lived only in the whispers of legend. They said that Queen Serena D'Aurel had vanished on a moonless night, that, weary of a throne heavier than a crown, she had abandoned everything for an impossible love. Some called it betrayal, others, courage. But no one knew the truth, except for a young woman who years later walked through the same gardens where her mother's fate had been sealed. Her name was Ilara. Her hair, a golden brown, resembled the sunset over the fields of Atheon. Her eyes, the color of the sky before rain, Sebastian's eyes. Ilara had grown up hearing whispered tales from the old ladies of the court. The queen who fled for love, the woman who chose her heart over her crown. But no one ever spoke the man's name. It was as if time itself had taken it upon to erase him, or protect him. That morning, the wind blew stronger, as if something were calling to her. Guided by an intuition she couldn't explain, Ilara walked to the old training courtyard, now covered in moss and wildflowers. There, among the broken stones, she found a symbol carved into the rock, 2 intertwined initials, S and S. She touched the engraving with her fingers, feeling the cold of the stone, and something warm stir within her chest. "Serena and Sebastian," she whispered, as though the wind itself had told her a secret. And in that moment, something changed.
After the escape, Serena and Sebastian had hidden in the northern mountains, where winter kissed the trees and silence became a shelter. They built a small stone house by the edge of a frozen lake. No throne, no cloak, no soldiers. Only the sound of the wind, the crackle of the fire, and the laughter of 2 hearts that, for the first time, beat freely. Serena traded her jewels for seeds. Sebastian, his sword for a paintbrush. He spent hours painting the lake, her face, and the simple life that had once seemed unreachable. She would sometimes laugh at how strange it felt to see herself without a crown, but at night, when he held her from behind and whispered that she was still the noblest of women, Serena realized she had found something greater than any empire, the peace that love gives when it no longer needs to hide. The years passed, and the world kept turning, as it always does. But the body, unlike love, grows weary. One snowy afternoon, Sebastian fell ill. Serena held him in her arms. This same man who had once sworn to protect her, now it was she who protected him from the cold, from loneliness, from death. "Don't cry, my queen," he whispered with a tired smile. "I kept you safe in every way I could." She kissed his forehead and for the last time felt his heart beating next to hers. After that day, no one ever saw her again. Some say Serena disappeared with his body into the lake, that she was taken by the wind, or that the gods took pity on them and turned them into a constellation. But no one truly knows, only that since then 2 stars have always shone side by side in the sky of Atheon, even on moonless nights.
Back in the present, Ilara found a small crevice within the stone. Carefully, she pulled out an aged iron box. Inside was a letter, sealed with the ancient crest of House D'Aurel. She opened it, and though the ink was old, the words felt alive. To the one who will one day find these words, if you were born free, smile, for there was a time when to love meant losing an entire kingdom. I was a queen, but love taught me that the true throne lies in the heart of the one we choose. If the blood that runs through your veins is mine, know that this love did not end here. It merely changed form, as the wind changes direction, yet never ceases to exist. Serena D'Aurel.
Elara wept, not out of sorrow, but from a deep, quiet pride. For the first time, she understood that the story told for generations was not a tragedy. It was a triumph. Her parents' love had endured, not in titles nor in portraits, but in blood and memory. The next day, standing before the royal council, Elara spoke with unwavering voice. For centuries, love has been treated as weakness, but it was love that gave my mother courage. It was love that saved the soul of Atheon. And that day, she broke the old laws. She outlawed marriages of convenience. She created a new oath for the guards, no longer of blind obedience, but of loyalty with purpose. The palace gates were open to the people, and a new portrait was hung in the great hall. Queen Serena and the guard Sebastian, painted side by side, no throne, no sword, only their hands intertwined. The inscription, carved in gold, read, "Here rests the love that defied the crown and won." And on windy nights, when flames dance upon the lake and the stars shimmer on the water, they say you can see two silhouettes walking side by side. She, with her hair unbound, laughing. He, calm-eyed, holding her hand as if holding fate itself. The people call it legend, but Elara knows the truth. Some loves do not die. They simply learn how to live through time. The end.